You're listening to 90.8 Hills FM Radio.
This is 90.8 Hills FM radio station, using our voice to rate your choice. Stay tuned.
Huni thaka khanso apuni khan jani bole hak ase. Jani kina thakibi ki HIV lagi bole tu itu charta rasta para hi ase.
HIV lagi gina thaka khan logote unprotected sex kuria para.
HIV infected needles or syringes chola karne.
HIV lagi gina thaka amma ekta para tai laga bacha ke lagai dibo pare.
HIV infected khun laga transfusion kuria para.
HIV uporte aro jankari lobo karne dial kuribi 1097.
Itu jankari diase Nagaland State AIDS Control Society para. Hello everyone and welcome back to 90.8 Hills FM, the voice of change. This is your RJ Gugu and I am very happy to welcome somebody in today's special episode because this is the first time that our community radio is having an individual, a gentleman, that I'm sure you would enjoy listening to. And I hope you stay tuned to listen to this conversation because it's going to help you understand, but not only understand, but open your mind to see the other side of the world where we often come in contact with something that we sometimes use it for our both personal and professional assistance. But I think the attempt and the intention of having this conversation is to help bridge the two sides of the worlds and also have a conversation around how we can build that empathy and understanding and friendship with a common purpose. So we have Mr. Orenthung Kikon. He is an ESC posted at Mokokchung district in a place called Longchim. And he is a member of the NCS since 2019. A good part of it is that he secured the first rank in 2017. NPSC examination that was declared in 2018, and he was appointed to the service in January 2019, and here he is. So it's not been easy getting him here because we've had a long conversation to get this far. But I think one of the things that I'm really looking forward in this conversation for our listeners and for myself is how do we intentionally, and when I say intentionally, it is with the purpose of wanting to learn, understand, and create and co-create that space where all of us are having healthy relationships. Now, in a state like ours, we often have conflict in a lot of misunderstandings and also how to bridge the gap of getting a certain work done. Now, being part of the administration, it's quite a challenge. And often as public, as citizens of the state, we have a pleasant experience or a happy experience. And today what me and Mr. Orent, we would like to do together is try to understand from the officer's perspective, but also as a citizen myself, on behalf of the audience, would like to also bring in and highlight some of the challenges and help us also understand how do we respond positively and also be part of that ecosystem where we are co-creating it, where it is livable for both sides, because the work needs to be done, and as a public servant and as a citizen of a particular village, district, or the state, we need to look at how we all can work together. So as I said, the community radio's purpose is to create the space to dialogue, irrespective of the different opinions that we may have or we have, but really learn to have conversation. And I think that's something that community radio we have been attempting to do, that we learn how to talk to one another with respect, in dignity, and also being able to build friendship along the line. So Mr. Orent, our listeners are quite excited because this is going to be the first time that we're doing it. And we hope that this conversation will encourage a lot of our government officers to take the opportunity to share their experiences of joining the force, but at the same time, how, as community leaders in your respective government role that you play, we could also take part in that, because it's a win-win situation for both sides. As a civil servant, you need the public, and public needs your service. And together we make a community. So welcome to our community radio, and thank you so much for saying yes and coming this far. And I think we, the Dimapurians, are very fortunate because I got to learn, dear listeners, that he is a Dimapurian himself. And we would get a glimpse of his experiences, of his preparation. And especially a lot of young people are aspiring civil servants. So from his journey of how his preparation happened, how did he decide to join this force, and after he cleared, how did he feel? I think these are some of the things of his personal experiences that will help us. And I'm sure anybody that you know in your family, or your friends who are aspiring and are taking coaching, would be of great help. And do share our conversation once it is ready in Spotify and the YouTube, and you'll find a link on our Hills FM Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. So I'm going to give all the way to Mr. Orent to introduce himself. So how about you say hi to our listeners?
Thank you, Google. Hi, everyone, listeners. I'm Orenthung. A very good afternoon to you all. In fact, this is my first time that I'm doing something of this kind. So, to be really frank, I'm quite nervous and I don't know where to begin with. But yeah, so as Gogo mentioned, I'm Orenthung and Orenthung Kikon, and I'm basically from Dimapur. And right now, as it has been already mentioned, I'm posted in a place called Longchem, which is under Mangolamba subdivision in Mokokchung district. And it's been a little over a year since I've been posted there. And prior to this, I had been posted in a place called Akuluto under Zanapoto district. And in fact, our Nagaland University, the headquarters of our Nagaland University Lumami campus, it actually falls under Akuluto. And prior to that, I was also posted in Zanapoto headquarters, which was my first posting. And during my training back in 2019, I also had the opportunity to serve in Tuensang as a part of my district district attachment for a period of 4 months in Tuensang district.
Okay, so did I pronounce wrongly? Is it Longchem or Longkum?
Longchem. It is Longchem,
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so often we pronounce incorrectly because we have never spelled that out before. So help me when I'm not pronouncing correctly, okay? And I think this is a learning process for all of us, because even as we being Nagas, we really don't know how to pronounce a lot of, words. And I think it's a process of learning for all of us. And I think one should not be embarrassed if one feels that, okay, I pronounced it wrongly. Or if somebody corrects us, I think we should take it as a pinch of salt and keep learning, because I often, as someone working in the radio and doing events, there's a lot of slip of tongues. So please correct me if I'm not pronouncing it properly. So having said that, your previous posting and where you are now, you mind sharing with us how has it been, like someone who has stayed in Dimapur, and then you go to this far-flung place, and how did you prepare your mind when you were told that you had to go to this particular place? It's no more a rural area and it's down there somewhere in the urban, a place where you've never been. How did you prepare, your mind and your attitude towards this new posting? And I think it's very important for our listeners to understand that, Because we've often heard that many people don't like going to the interiors. And this is not just with uh, someone from your position, but it is also to do with teachers, doctors. And it breaks our heart when our own people who have the authority and can make a change and bring a change don't want to go to the interiors. So I'm taking this opportunity to ask you from your experience, that how has it been for you?
Well, yes, indeed, I was brought up in Dimapur. I was born in Mohokchung, and of course, I hardly remember anything about my early days. But then, of course, soon after I was born, perhaps it was maybe after a few months that my father got transferred to Kohima. And then, just before I started schooling, again, my father happened to be transferred to Dimapur, and so this is from where I began my schooling. I did my schooling here in Dimapur, and then after my schooling, after doing my 12th, I went outside Nagaland to pursue for higher studies and all. So yeah, basically, I've always, in fact, up until the time when I joined Nagaland Civil Service, I had hardly seen any part of Nagaland, except for maybe perhaps Kohima or my parents' native places. Except for that, I haven't seen any place in Nagaland. And I remember as a student also, I always had this thing in mind, and sometimes I used to share with my friends also that one day definitely I would love to explore Nagaland. I would love to visit and see the different aspects of our state, of our Nagaland. And in fact, that happened only after I joined the service. And yeah, when it comes to postings, I still remember the day. It was in February 2020 that we had just finished our foundation training in ATI, and then we were awaiting our posting, and then it was sometime in February 2020 that we got our posting notification, and that was just before the lockdown, the COVID lockdown. So when I saw that I was being posted in Znavoto, of course, we have all heard a lot about Znavoto, and in fact, growing up, I have had many Sumi friends, and I still do have, good Sumi friends. And but of course, like initially when I saw my name in the posting notification, definitely I felt a bit apprehensive.
Why?
I mean, I maybe perhaps it was a new place, altogether a new place.
True.
And I mean, people usually have this, and in fact, okay, to be very frank, even some of my neighbors and some people whom I know, we Nagas, we usually have this, what do you call that, that perception about certain people and places and all.
That's true. That's a fact.
In fact,
Yeah.
in fact, we have that famous popular Methanile song also.
I was just going to say that. He says it all,
Yeah.
but in a very satire. Yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So perhaps somewhere that was also underplay, I guess. And in fact, some of my elders who had served there, who had been there, so they were also telling me that it's quite a rough place. Rough in the sense, the roads and
Yes.
the weather, it's quite extreme, and there are certain things which are quite difficult to get, so on and so forth. So of course, the idea that you are actually going out away from your comfort zone, and that you're going to be posted there with some kind of a responsibility upon you. So it did really make me nervous. And but of course, like one comforting thing which I had at the back of my mind at that time was that, I've grown up with a lot of semi friends, and I was quite familiar also. And in fact, as luck would have it, during our training in ATI, we are supposed to take up one language,
Okay.
or rather one of the Naga dialects
All right.
as a part of our training.
Okay.
And we are evaluated. I mean, we appear for an exam also in that particular language. So I happened to choose Simi.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was like a coincidence as well. So with that, like, I ended up in Zinomoto. It was sometime in the first week of March. And, like, within just a few months, within just a couple of months, Zinomoto felt like my own home. So that was the kind of experience that I've had. And of course, we had a really tough time considering, the pandemic which happened, which coincided with our posting. And so that is why, we used to joke with our friends also that among my batchmates, that we are a batch which has been, baptized by virus. So ours was a batch which had been baptized by the virus, by that unprecedented COVID-19 virus.
The famous virus.
but
Yeah.
nevertheless, being in Zinomoto, I was there for 1 year. I was there from March 2020 till April 2021, and in that period of 1 year that I was there, I learned a lot of things, not only professionally, but also at the same time, I also got this really good opportunity to explore. In fact, I must tell you that during my stay in Zinomoto district, except for Powoto subdivision, I've been to all the subdivisions.
Really?
Yeah.
In that span of the time that you were there?
Yes,
Wow.
indeed. So, like, I've been to Agnato, I've been to Sataka. There is a place called Hoshepo, which is under Agnato subdivision only. And Hoshepo is like, it's just on the boundary between Kifri
Okay.
and Zinomoto. So, and then to Satoe, Satoe, all these places are like EAC headquarters, and
Okay.
which are located quite remote also. I mean, their location is also quite remote. And I've been to Akuluto. In fact, eventually I got posted in Akuluto only. I was there for 1.5 years. So, during all those times, and even the Suroto also. So, by virtue of my duty, at the same time, during weekends, I used to make plans, to travel one of those subdivisions. And
You
then,
mean to say you don't rest at all?
yeah, I used to.
Quite an adventurous officer you are.
Maybe perhaps, it was maybe a reaction to that lockdown which we had all experienced, that
Okay.
period of lockdown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to like get out of that. Yeah.
That's what. So, I was there in Zomoto, like, after going there in the month of March, this lockdown also, coincided with it. March 17 to 20, it was around the time that the entire nation, or for that matter, the entire world went into a, standstill.
Yes.
So, of course, as a part of the administration and, the health workers, police, and the administration, we had quite a hectic time. but nevertheless, we were all confined to one particular place only. It was a time when we could not even travel also.
True.
So, from March up until maybe around October, I was in Zinomoto only. I could not even come back home to Dimapur. So, once things got eased up, so perhaps that was a reaction to that, I guess. So I made it a point that, every weekend I'll visit one of those subdivisions. And it was not only, when I think back right now, it was not just for a joyride of sorts, but at the same time, it helped me, gain a perspective about the people also. And, in the process, when I think back, when I look back, what I learn is that as an administrator, or for that matter, perhaps as any government servant, it is imperative upon the government servant to have a fair idea about the people and the place that
Correct.
she or he is serving. So, and the beauty about our Nagaland is such that, even within one particular district, we can see a lot of varieties. And it's quite fascinating actually just to think about it.
So when you say you see, varieties, maybe our listeners would be interested. What do you mean by varieties?
For instance, in Zinomoto district, although I'm not a native speaker, but then, even to the untrained ears,
Okay.
you can see a variation, or you can experience a variation in the Smi dialect that they speak
You mean within the same...
within the district. Like
Okay.
for example, Pohoto area.
All right.
People from Pohoto area, they have a distinct, even though it is Smi only, but then
Okay.
they have a distinct variation.
All right.
And likewise, even with the rest also, Agnato side, and then when you go towards Akulto side also, and Atoiza. So, certain, this one is there. In fact, even in Moksham also it is like that.
Yes, I agree.
I mean, that is just one example. But then even in other aspects as well, na? And maybe say the way we cook a particular dish and things like that also. So, and not only that, but then even when we look at the terrain out there. And I must tell you, in my this around 5 years of service that I've been in the NCS, I've had the opportunity to see parts of Nagaland which I never thought existed in Nagaland.
Wow.
Like for instance, during our training, we have this as a part of our training. We have this attachment with various organizations. So we have this army attachment as well. So during that time, we had this opportunity to go towards Meluri side, Underpeg district. And we actually got the opportunity to go till Avanku, the international border. And mind you, I was just amazed by the flora and fauna out there, by the landscape that is there out there. It's something which is really unique. And likewise, in Zinomoto also, when I was there in Zinomoto, the hills and the vegetation and all, it's such a beautiful place. And it really amazes us actually. And when I think about all these things, it really makes me feel proud and emotional as well to be a Naga. And we're really blessed to have a place like Nagaland. And so coming back to my experiences with postings, so so that that is how it was, in the beginning. Of course, maybe it's a part of life only that, whenever we are faced with something uncertain, or when, there is uncertainty in front of us, or the prospect of going somewhere where we have never been but just heard of, then definitely there'll be some apprehensions. But nevertheless, once you go there, once you get to know the people, and, once you mingle with them, it feels as if, you are a part of that. And earlier you were mentioning about many people out there who crib about getting posted, or, about going to remote areas and all. But perhaps we should take it as an opportunity rather. We should look at it as an opportunity to learn about the people, opportunity to, be there and experience the variety that is there, the variety that, our state has to offer. No? And I mean, to be very frank, it's not that we're going to be there for forever as well.
Correct.
And who knows, once we get there, if we are really attached to it, it's our choice. We can even make a choice, to be a part of there and remain there forever as well. No? I mean, I have come across,
Really?
people, yeah, like
Wow.
when I was in Zinoto, I remember coming across one gentleman, one very old man.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps he must have been in his 80s at that time, who, I don't know whether he's still alive or not, but then he was a Lotha. He is a Lotha, and then, he got posted there, and then he married a Smi, and, he remained there. He settled there only.
Oh, that's beautiful story.
And of course, if we look at, or rather if we consider, the generation of our parents, or maybe our grandparents' generation and all, I mean, there are people who have actually, made the place where they serve as their own. Like, for instance, I remember in Shamator, I was, during my district attachment, I was there in Tuensang, and as a part of that, I had the opportunity to serve in Shamator as well for a few days. Of course, Shamator at that time was an ADC headquarters, very much under Tuensang district only. So I remember hearing about, people from other communities other than Nimkyung.
Oh,
Aos, mostly Aos,
okay.
who had settled there. Of course, that was a long time back, but then, so it used to happen. No? So, in fact, sometimes when I think about all these things, it's quite an irony actually, that, as we are progressing, I mean, as time progresses, we are also supposed to progress.
Yes.
But unfortunately, somewhere, we tend to have certain regressive ideas as well. So, but I hope that, as the generation goes on, and as we pursue the real meaning of education, perhaps, our perception also would change. Perhaps we would be more accommodative of each other. So, yeah.
I think, as I said earlier offline, I can just go on listening to you. So I'm quite intrigued by what you said about the variety. And we do hope that, if we were to look from the lenses, that you're trying to, or you made an effort for all of us to picturize it. It's the experiences, that helps us excite others to look at, from a perspective that perhaps many have not looked at. And I think we've often taken things for granted. Now, with the tourism boosting in our state, and rural tourism, ecotourism, and we also see on the different areas of agriculture, horticulture, you talk about handloom, handicraft, you name it, which our Naga people are blessed with. But we're going to the extent of so much of commercializing. it's just the beginning. We're not there yet, but it has its own pros and cons. So when you were describing about the beauty of these places that you have been posted, and you experience someone, who just got through the exam after a lot of preparation, and then you were talking about your first posting and your first reaction, or perhaps to respond, imagining yourself to be somewhere like there, and some people sharing about, hey, the place is a little dry. I mean, the description itself discourages you even wanting to like that place, but till the time you reach that place and you go with an open mind and you allow things to be absorbed, and how you enjoyed at the later stage of your stay there, and how you discovered and explored, definitely change your perspective about that place.
Absolutely.
And of course, the good point of having your friends, people you've had, and the beautiful story about, if you can stay forever if you want, right?
Absolutely.
So I think we have ample choices, but I guess it's about a certain experiences that changes everything, for good or for bad, and that's what we get from what you're sharing. So what did it take? Because to become a civil servant, and I'm sure our listeners would be very interested to know that, along with me. To become a civil servant, it also speaks a lot about the volume, or I think it's immeasurable, the kind of sacrifices and the costs that it comes along with. Because as far as I've listened, and I know a lot of friends, families, relatives, who have prepared. I mean, my own older brother who set for preparation when we were in Delhi, the number of his friends and batchmates sacrificing years of preparation, we don't get to hear that a lot. So I want to go back a little backwards, if you don't mind, since there will be people listening and may like to share this conversation to their aspiring nephews, cousins, friends,
Certainly.
who are sitting for coaching and taking coaching in Nagaland, because we can see a lot of mushrooming of a lot of aspiring, coaching institutes, and rather than going to the metropolitan city because it costs a lot, we also come across young people who are forced and pushed by their parents to try out competitive exams.
Indeed.
I'm not quite sure whether that was your situation. Was it an individual choice that you made, or what was it, a persuasion of your parents who pushed you? But there's a lot of pressure with our Naga boys and girls from their family, their relatives, the society. And we being a community, we have many social obligations, right? So how did you, from your own personal story, in a nutshell, if you don't mind, could share your experience? How did you balance this?
Okay.
Because we still have young people trying to figure out, do I concentrate on my preparation, or do I get into the societal obligations, or do I do it because I love doing it and this is what I want to do it, and before your age finishes you need to attempt. I still have my mentees who are going through that. They are not able to figure out exam dibuna, ama baba la kota honibuna. There's a lot of confusion going on. For those who are clear, they're clear, and they're pursuing it. But for those who, how do you help a child? Let's say a young guy, to know that he is made for this. Because there are a lot of parents, Naga families, still pushing their boys and girls after their exams, class 12 or graduation, to still pursue and sit for the exam. But after a number of years, when it doesn't happen, it adds into frustration, and a lot of wrong things go on. This whole mental health is part of this. But in our Naga society, mental health is still a very new thing. We're just beginning. After a lot of years, a lot of changes have happened, but we're still not there yet. So may I ask you to help our listeners and help our young men and women to lighten them up a little and motivate them through your experience. Yeah.
Absolutely, indeed. But to be very frank, you mentioned in a nutshell.
Yes.
I'm
Yes,
just-
in a nutshell.
But actually, I'm just wondering how actually can I put it all in a nutshell. But anyhow, I will try my best. But of course. But before I actually go into that, let me just clarify something about my friends, the Simi friends.
Uh-huh.
Of course, those friends which was mentioning are all actually based here in Dimapur only.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right. I think they need to go back to their villages now. You should push them in. Yeah.
No, I mean, just, like at that time I was just trying to link a familiarity with the
Yes.
place.
Oh, we all do. We
Yeah,
all
where,
do.
where I was
Yeah.
going. But of course, now that, when I look back at Zinamoto, even to this day, I feel it as my own home, as my own place. And, I've met a lot of good friends out there also. New friends, new families.
So it's not
who
a
are like
strange
family.
land anymore to you.
Absolutely not at all.
Amazing.
Yeah. So now, coming back to the preparations.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, indeed. Well, actually, in my case, as far back as I can remember,
Mm-hmm.
I've always wanted to be a civil servant.
Oh,
In fact, I would tell you,
yeah.
I used to imagine myself as a small boy. And, that was before I even started going school. I was in Kohima actually at that time. And I used to imagine myself as an IAS officer.
Really? How old were you that time?
I must have been maybe 3 or 4 years old.
3? Are
Yeah.
you serious?
Yeah. And I don't know, maybe it was the fact that I was in Kohima, I guess.
Uh-huh.
And, but my idea at that point of time of an IAS officer was that for me, it was like, I used to imagine myself as, coming in a white ambassador,
Oh,
all suited and booted, and then having lots of ice creams.
now I'm very curious. Sorry, I'm cutting you a little bit, but I'm very curious. Did you really do the ice cream part after you became one?
I still do.
You do?
Whenever
Great.
I get the
You lived your
opportunity.
dream. Yeah.
So, I mean, so that was the thing. Like, as far back as I can remember, I've always wanted to be a civil servant, and particularly an IAS officer. And now that I'm in the NCS, I'm reminded of that saying. I remember, the first time I heard of it was during my school days from a teacher who said that, aim at the star and shoot at the moon. So perhaps my star was IAS, and I got to be able to shoot at, the moon, which is the NCS. Anyhow, so that thing was there, and all throughout my school days, those days, it was in the 90s, and internet was not as it is now. And so the only source of information, or rather, the most common source of information, were the magazines, the periodicals that were there. And, as much as possible, I used to follow those things. And, from quite early on, I had been quite interested with, the hierarchy and all these things. So, and I used to, ask my father also. Of course, although he was in the government services, but he was a technical person. So, he also, didn't have much idea about, the various aspects of administration and police and all these things. But then it really intrigued me, and, I used to be really interested in that. And so, whenever I used to come across in the newspaper about various this thing, and then, in the magazines, like those days, we used to have this magazine called Pratyogita Darban, and then
Yes.
Competition Success Review or something like that. So, we used to see interviews of toppers and all. And those days, what I noticed was, the toppers, or most of those people who were clearing UPSC, were from engineering background.
Oh, okay.
I mean, many of them.
All right.
Of course, today it's, it continues to this day as well. In fact, we even have now Naga youngsters who have actually, who are engineers and who have
True.
went on to, clear to UPSC and are in the IAS and all. So, but then at that point of time, it was, to me, it was kind of a rarity. And my father had this civil list,
Oh,
this book of, that book where, you have the civil list of all
Yes.
the government officers and all. So I used to go through that, and the list of those IAS officers. And I used to look at the qualification. And if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly, none of the Naga IAS officers who were there at that point of time were from technical background. They were all, either, from arts or sciences, no? But not from engineering or medical and all. So by the time I reached class 10, I was thinking that, okay, I will be, I will, I will first be a technocrat in the sense like, I'll go for professional studies and then I'll try for UPSC.
okay.
So that was the dream of a 15-year-old boy at that time. And so the desire was there. And I went on to do my 11 and 12 in science. And later on, I got a, opportunity also to get into an engineering college. But unfortunately, being quite reckless and all these things, I dropped out of engineering also, and things went quite haywire. So the desire was always there, but somehow, somewhere, the will was not very strong enough.
Okay.
And that's how in the process I ended up losing quite many years as well. But so ultimately, I ended up doing BSc in electronics from Osmania University in Hyderabad. And after that, I went to Delhi to pursue my UPSC dream. So I joined a coaching institution over there. And so those days, this, I believe it's still very popular, Vajiram, Shriram, and Rao's IAS and all. So I joined Shriram, and I used to stay in Old Regiment Nagar, which is near Karol Bagh in central Delhi.
Yes.
So I was there, and then I started my journey. And, at that time, I used to just focus on UPSC only.
So what do you mean by I used to focus only on UPSC?
I mean, I thought at that point of time I was quite confident of myself. So, I did not have any kind of plan B as such.
Oh,
And usually people have plan A, plan B and all, isn't it? When it comes to exam as well. And to the listeners, especially to those people who are aspiring and those who are trying, what I would want to tell you is, I'm sure you must have heard this n number of times, but then it's always, always keep a plan B with you. Plan B can be, with regards to the level of your examination, or it could be, pertaining to your career, your academic pursuit, or even your career as well. No? So you can be, you can be trying for your competitive examinations, but at the same time, you should have that flexibility. And that is something which I did not have at that point of
Okay.
time. So, of course, I attempted quite a few times. That was back in 2011 and 2012, 13. So up until 2013, I used to sit for UPSC only. And my father used to suggest that why don't I try for NPSC as well? But at that point of time, I was a bit overconfident about myself also. So I thought, I'll just clear UPSC. And I've had the opportunity to sit for the mains examination in UPSC also. And that had me, more charged up as well. So So like it was in 2014 that I first opened my account, so to say, here in NPSC.
Oh,
And I was fortunate enough to reach till the interview, but unfortunately I could not make it into the final list. And then later on, the following year, actually in 2015, unfortunately my father expired. So he was diagnosed with cancer, stomach cancer, and then it was quite a sudden thing for every one of us. And then we had to take him to Delhi, and then he underwent treatment for about 7-8 months over there, and unfortunately he passed away. So yeah, so for the listeners, another one thing which I would like to share over here off the topic is, it's like it is also very important for us to actually have regular checkups of our health, especially in this kind of times that we're living in right now,
Yeah.
where we are surrounded with processed foods, and the kind of lifestyle that we have and the environment around us. So we are being exposed to a lot of things, so we must be quite wary about our health as well. So traditionally, if we see, when we look at the generation of our parents, it is only when we are really ill that we actually go in search of a doctor.
Correct.
But that should not be the case with us, and especially in this kind of generation. So anyhow, coming back, so 2015, just went away like that. And 16, I appeared again for the NPSC. Of course, UPSC, by the time, I wasn't even able to clear the prelims by the time. And so, like, in 2016, I sat down, was fortunate enough to reach till the interview, but I could not make it. And so by 17, to be very frank, I was like now quite depressed. And you were earlier mentioning about, the balance between social and the preparations and all. So, by that time, I had already started to, feel insecure about myself. And most of my friends, they were doing quite well. They were either doing in some kind of service or into some kind of business and all. And I was here still, trying for the examination. And then by that time, like, my father had also already expired. So being the eldest in the family, there were a lot of things, a lot of new responsibilities. So amidst all that, but right now, if I just think back, like, I'm really grateful for the family that I've been blessed with. My mom and my brothers, especially my younger brothers, they've been really supportive. And although I'm the eldest, but then, there has been times when my younger siblings have been more responsible than me. So, somehow I can say, or rather I would say that, that balance worked out in that way. And of course, there were times when I had to travel quite a lot as well. And so, preparations, something which I would want to say about preparations is that when you start your preparation, especially to those, listeners over here who are aspirants, I encourage you to start with all earnestness right from the start. Usually we Nagas, we have this tendency that chalo, today I'll just skim through, and now on the next round they all of deep jabo. Please don't do that. We never know what will happen tomorrow. Fortunately for me, back during the times when I was preparing for UPSC, I was like really focused. So although I could not, eventually clear the UPSC examination, civil services examination. But then when I was trying for NPSC, and with all the responsibilities regarding family responsibilities that were there, you know, being focused at that point of time really helped me. Because, you know, now, and of course by the time I was already kind of a veteran also. So, you know,
Veteran.
so I used to think to myself, na, ki, okay, it was somewhere there in my head. So, you know, I can always retrieve it. Na? So, you know, but then that could happen only because I had been, you know, really focused initially when the foundation was being built. Na? So that is really essential. Of course, during preparations also, there were many trials and errors as well. And, you know, to be honest, in fact, just a couple of days back also, in fact, let me tell you, I just forgot to mention earlier that, you know, during the course of our postings at different places, in fact, it was back in 2019 when I was in Toinsang, when I was doing my district attachment, that I had a really good opportunity to meet Dr. Pritpal Kaur,
Oh,
IPS,
yes.
who is
Yeah.
the SP of PEC right now.
Correct.
And she was SDPO then, at that point of time, in Toinsang.
Yeah.
And, you know, somehow it was, you know, by fine coincidence that she had already started a class. She had already started one coaching class for the aspirants out there in Toinsang who could not actually travel to, you know, Dimapur and other places, you know, who were based in Toinsang. No?
Okay.
So she used to take classes over there. And then, so, you know, I also had the good opportunity to join her.
Oh, well, that's wonderful.
And we had around 35 to 40 students out there. And in fact, you know, eventually, you know, in the subsequent years, some of them have successfully cleared NPSC.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's a wonderful news.
very much indeed.
Yes.
Yeah, and in fact, you know, some of those students still remain in touch with me.
Oh, that's even more wonderful.
So, you know, that's how I've had this good opportunity to, you know, always go back, return back to the, you know, times of my preparation days. So just a couple of days back also, I was having this conversation with one of my students. So, you know, like when it comes to preparation also, like for instance, this history, I've always had this problem with history,
Okay.
and especially coming from a science background. You know, history has always been a mystery to me. So, and you know, my idea about history was memorize the dates. That's it. No?
Exactly.
But you know, it wasn't working at all. It wasn't working at all. And you know, and there was a point when I was in Delhi. You know, like it was either, you know, make it or break it kind of situation. So I had to go through it. So I was just thinking, you know, how to go about with this subject. And so somehow, you know, I learned this technique, or rather, for me, I started viewing history as the name of the subject suggests, story.
Story.
Yeah, so I started looking at history as a story, as if I'm reading a story. And also I made this, you know, I pasted this map of India.
Okay.
Like for like when I was reading Indian history, and especially in NPSC, if we see, it's mostly modern history only, pertaining to, you know, the national freedom struggle and all. So what I did was I pasted this map of India, Indian map, in my room. And then whenever I used to, you know, read about the various this thing, for instance, Gandhi's Dandi March, non-cooperation movement and all. So of course the names of places and the dates and all are mentioned.
Okay.
So what I used to do was, I'll look at the place, I'll try to locate it on the map,
Okay.
and then the date. So when I look at the date, I'll just imagine about, the season at that time. So I'll just imagine, like, suppose if Dundee March was in the month of March. So I used to imagine, okay, springtime by the
Very
seashore.
creative of
nah?
you. Yeah.
So,
Imagination, yes.
yeah. So, that is how this thing, like, I don't know how I came to this. But anyhow, so
Well, the best part is that you're helping us to, I think, especially for the listeners, this is what storytelling is all about, your life experience. And I'm glad you're doing this. So thank you for allowing us to dwell with you in your experience.
thank you so much. That's
Yeah.
very kind of you. So, like, I mean, those were things which happened during the course of my preparation. And of course, as I was mentioning earlier, there was a point of time when I used to feel really depressed and insecure about myself also. And so by 2017, I was at this point. In fact, I would tell you, I almost ended up not sitting for this prelims, 2017 NPSC prelims.
Because of your sense of feeling low about how
that
things were.
and actually at that point of time a lot of things were going on,
True.
and I hardly had any time to actually prepare also. So I had just thought that I wouldn't sit for this exam, I mean that particular thing, and I was just thinking, I was just toying with the idea that I'll go back to Delhi and then I'll just give my everything and try for UPSC again. Because to be very frank, by that time, there was one thing which was already creeping into my mind. People usually have this, thing about NPSC being corrupt.
Oh, okay.
Saying that pusa dishe, things like that, kinishe and all
Well,
those
it's still
things.
going on.
So, the same thing crept into my mind. So I
okay.
started, because, it was like my third attempt already. It was going to be my third attempt already. And then having faced interview twice already, like I was quite demoralized. And I began to think in that manner as well.
It influences your mind. Yeah.
Very much
Yes,
indeed.
yes.
So, like I started thinking that, okay, there's something unfair going on. And I'll never be able to actually, make it through in this kind of situation. So instead of wasting time, I'll just go back. I've already wasted many years now, so I'd rather go back to Delhi. So that's what, I was doing. And I was just telling my mother also about it. And so I still remember that morning of that prelims examination. So in fact, the examination center happens to be just near my place.
Oh,
So from my room window, I can actually see.
lucky you.
So that morning, as people were coming, people were milling in to the examination hall, it had me thinking, and then, that same thought came to my mind, that, okay, I haven't prepared much, but since I'm a veteran now already, so something dimag tikki bek to thakibo.
I like this veteran
Question.
tag that you have gifted yourself.
Question to, like it won't be too unfamiliar for me. So, okay, why not, just go and sit once again. You've already said so many times. That's what I told to myself. And thinking so, I went and sat for the exam, for the prelims, and as luck would have it, I cleared the prelims by just a fraction of, few marks only.
Woohoo.
I don't remember exactly how many marks, but it was 1 point something, or,
Okay.
even lesser than that.
All right.
I had just barely made the cutoff. So when the results came out, it was like I had about a little over 1 month. So I thought to myself, and I told my mom also, that, I won't go anywhere for this few days. I'll just confine myself to the room, and then I'll give my best over here. And if it is I mean, if I get through, is good enough. If not, then it's done. So this is my last. So thinking so, I sat and, you know, by God's grace, that particular year, I actually cleared this examination. And so, you know, with this experience, what I would want to tell the aspirants who are listening, and, you know, who some of you might have in your mind, at the back of your mind, that, you know, there's something wrong with NPSC, something wrong. I don't know about, you know, the past, but at least through what I've experienced, if you really work hard, you can always, you know, I mean, if you really work hard, and if it's really meant for you, you'll surely get it. So that is one message which I would, you know, want to pass on to the listeners as well. And yeah, so that is how the balance had been. And I used to imagine myself during those days of preparation, you know, when I clear, I'll do this, I'll do that. Result ola damde, na? On the day of the result,
The checklist.
I used to imagine myself, you know, bringing some crackers and bursting.
So that did not happen?
All those kinds of crazy stuff.
So you didn't do it?
I'll tell you, you know, in fact, when the results were announced, it was in October, in the month of October 2018. I don't exactly remember the date now, but it was either 10th or 11th. 10th or 11th of October. So, in the afternoon, when the results were announced, one of my friends called me from Kohima. So, he was there outside the examination hall, and the first thing that he told me was congratulations. So, you know, I felt, thank God. At least the verdict ekta paise. So I was like relieved, quite relieved that, okay, at least, you know, kibakta the hoishe. And then he said, you know, you got the first rank.
Wow.
And I was like, no, don't do it with me. Then, you know, he sent me the picture. He took a picture of that and he sent me. He also, you know, got into NPS.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
You know, I would like to share one incident with regard to that also. On the day of the interview, you know, we were three of us.
Okay.
Three of us in the sense, like, of course, there were quite many people, but then by the time, you know, our turns came, so there were only the three of us. And so me, my friend, and there was another lady. So just as we were waiting at the lobby, I just thought to myself that, you know, I was just praying. And then I thought, why not, you know, just call my friends also, and, you know, why not just pray together? No? And, you know, saying that, I just suggested that why don't we, you know, hold our hands and pray together before we enter the hall. So they also agreed. Initially, I was a bit apprehensive because, you know, when it comes to praying in public, you know, we all are a bit, thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I was also feeling a bit weird, but since, you know, I just thought, chalta hai ki kuri sabo to, na? And thinking so, we just prayed. And so we went in turn by turn after that. And, you know, on the day of the results, all three of us, I got into NCS. My friend was selected for NPS. And the lady, she qualified as taxes inspector. So, you know, that is also one testimony about, you know, when you really pray with a true heart, it's not about the rituals. It's not about kneeling down. It's not about, having an elaborate words of prayer, or it's not about those things. But God wants our hearts only. So when we really pray with a sincere heart, and of course we need to have our effort also. When we put in enough effort in the right direction, and when we do it sincerely, and then when we sincerely place it everything in front of God surely helps. So that is one experience which I've had, and which I would really like to share with the listeners also. And along with your preparation, whatever be it, be it you might be preparing for the civil services, or the competitive examinations, and some of you might be preparing or planning about starting a business, or getting into entrepreneurship, or thinking about diversifying your business and all. So we are all believers, so I think it's good that we put God first. And when we do that, automatically everything will work out. And when we do that, the best in us also comes out. So that is what I believe, and that is what I've been trying to do.
Wow, that's, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure our listeners have been inspired and moved and reflecting definitely with what you've shared. And I mean, to sum it up, it's, I think, as you've rightly said, becoming the best version of yourself. And with so much that had happened in you during that time, it brought out the best, and the best decision for yourself, and walking by faith, in faith.
Absolutely.
And such an amazing story also to get to hear, where you've shared about these two people, that you've prayed with before the exam. It's very true. We shy away in displaying our faith in the open. But listening to your heart and doing what is right for you, and doing it sincerely and with the purest of intention, never goes wrong. And it was at the right time.
Very much
So,
indeed.
congratulations to two of those friends of yours. I hope you're still in touch. Well, we don't know who you are, but if you're listening, and if you get the chance to listen to this conversation, from all of us, from the radio family, we would like to congratulate you for your hard work, and also keeping the faith and doing your part and leaving the rest in God's hand. And I think through Oren's story, a lot of us also have been learning that if you could have that little mustard seed faith, irrespective of the circumstances we all fall into, we need to continue to pursue that dream and desire that we have in our hearts. And God said too, that He always fulfills the desire of our heart, as long as you put Him first. And this has also left me inspired once again, because it is these kind of stories that makes us hope again.
Yeah.
And so, Oren, we just want to ask you, what is a legacy that you wish to leave behind, as a person and as an officer? Because you've got years ahead, and as you've said, 5 years now, and with a lot of opening and opportunities that you've been receiving. Definitely there are challenges, and you've shared through your personal and professional field, and beginning from your preparation, and I think that's what made you stronger, and that's been your strength, and how you see things around you, and how you desire to make a difference in, through the work that you have. And the beauty of it is, as a kid, starting from as long as you can remember, as 3-year-old or 4-year-old, and the vision that you had for yourself. And I think I like the picture where you said about eating the ice cream, seriously, those are the dreams that makes you pursue life, and you're hungry for it. And I think that's what we all need to be hungry for. And congratulations once again. And the beautiful name tag you gave yourself, veteran, and I think that's something encourages and motivates perhaps those who have even forgotten about it, after a lot of attempts. And if you are thinking that you did not have a name, Oren has already given you a name for being a veteran, because I think those are the attempts that makes you help know yourself better. And so glad that you actually had that exam hall outside your window, you know? And, but, but I think the other side is it was up to you. It's a yes or no. And I think you took a chance, and glad you did. And here you are.
Indeed. Yeah.
And we as a community radio, we are so fortunate to have this, chance to hear your story. And that's what we are here for. We're here to get inspiring stories, to be inspired, to aspire, especially even for those who may have even forgotten about their dreams. I think that's something that we all need to help others also wake up. And the little things that we can do, we pursue it with all our heart and sincerity. And today's conversation has been intentional, listeners, because unless we have the right intention, I think things are not going to work out, no matter how much we try. So our intention in the right place, in the right time, and because sometimes our intentions are right, but it's not the right time. And sometimes it's the right time, but our intentions are not in the right place. So there's always a wrestling, of that. It's a battle. But with God, anything is possible. And if it's meant for us, what Oren has just shared, if it's meant for us, it will just come to you. All you got to do is do your part. And I'm glad Oren did his part. So that's why I would like to conclude by asking Oren what is the legacy that he wished to leave behind. I'm not saying he's leaving now, but as he also says that we just don't know what's tomorrow in store for you. But what we do today is definitely how we wire our mind. So every single morning that you wake up, Oren, what is it that what self-talk do you do? And what is it that every single day that you wish to leave behind and have people inspired by the work that you do? So I think I would like to conclude in that form, to leave our listeners left with charged up and to have hope, because we don't know who's listening to us. So would love to hear from you.
Certainly. Well, earlier I was just about to tell you. In fact, I didn't tell you what I did after the results were out.
All right, so we'll hear that too.
So, in fact, the day when the results were declared, and when my friend told me that about the news, all those things which I was imagining before, it was nothing compared to the fear that I had in my heart at that point of time. Instead of all those things about celebrating, the first thing that came to my mind and which I felt was fear. That will I be worthy of this blessing that I've just got? God has actually blessed me beyond my expectation, beyond what I was worth. So will I be able to live according to this? So, that was the only emotion that was there. And let me tell you, I couldn't sleep the whole night. Of course, I was happy, but with that thought. And now, few years down the line, having experienced different places, different people, different situations, different circumstances, there are times when, as a civil servant with some responsibilities, there are times when, we feel different kind of emotions. And there are times when we are frustrated as well. There are times when we are angry as well. And there are, of course, times when we feel accomplished. And, while juggling with the responsibilities, we tend to get carried away as well, to be very frank. But so far, in this 5 years that I've been a part of the Nagaland Civil Service, and, while trying to fulfill my responsibilities, time and again I'm reminded of that particular day. And that is what I believe has been, I'm reminded to keep myself grounded. And, that is perhaps that is something which reminds me of my purpose as well. And so, to the listeners also, what I would like to say is all this process, and especially having been through as a civil service aspirant, we may or may not find success. I have many friends, during my preparation days for UPSC, many friends from South India, from Andhra, from Telangana, from Maharashtra, and from North India as well. Some of them could clear, some didn't, but that did not break them actually. And in fact, all those experiences, it was a process. In fact, it was a process in itself to make them into who they are now. And in fact, they're doing really well. So I travel to Delhi quite often, and I'm still in touch with some of my friends, those friends, and they're doing really well. So it's not just the civil services. But by saying this, I'm not discouraging you, and I'm not encouraging you to be, slack in your preparations. But then when you are preparing it, what I would want to encourage you is that, take it as a process to improve yourself. Take it as, a process where you are being forged by fire. Because let me tell you, right now, as a civil servant in different districts and in the rural areas, all these experiences comes handy. And of course, we have gone through training, and we operate, under certain set of rules and regulations and all. But there are many times, many instances where we have to make decisions which are not at all in the syllabus, out of syllabus.
Yes. That's very important.
So, this process as an aspirant, I remember one of our teacher used to quip this term called anticipated behavior. Something called anticipated behavior. So, anticipated behavior, matlab, as the name suggests, you're anticipating something, you're anticipating to become something. And so you behave in that manner. And I remember, during my days of preparation in Delhi, in fact, even now also, sometimes when I'm in Delhi, I make it a point, if time allows, to go and visit, old Rajendra Nagar. And in fact, last December, one very memorable evening, I happened to be in Batra, North Delhi. So, looking at the people around there, even during our days also, aspiring to be an IAS, aspiring to be an IPS, we used to, in our mind, we were already that. And we used to behave, we used to talk in that manner as well. No? So, of course, it's quite funny right now to think back. But then, that anticipated behavior. And that behavior, we should actually develop, not to make us, become proud or indifferent, but then through all these experiences that we're going through, and through the various techniques that we are using to learn. Like, for instance, I was just telling you about, how I studied history. So how I tried to link geography, history, different subjects in order to understand the history. So likewise, in that manner, when eventually, as a civil servant, when you are posted in a particular department, or when you are, posted in some place, it could be a rural area, it could be an urban area, it could be in the headquarter, anywhere. So, it's basically about dealing with people. It's basically about, being the agents of the government,
True.
being with the grassroots. No? So, in such a scenario, there will definitely be times, and there'll be good times as well as bad times. And there'll be times when, there is nothing to refer to. All you have to do is just bring it out from within yourself. And, that is when all these experiences that you're going through today will come in handy. So, that's one thing. And then earlier, as I was mentioning about, revisiting where you began, that is something which is really important. And yeah, Gugu, you were mentioning about what legacy do I want to leave behind. Well, to be very frank, as a child growing up, I used to be very ambitious. But now, of course, what I've learned is that, we cannot be everything and anything also. But at the same time, what we can do, or, like that song, one day at a time. So it's just about that, now one day at a time. And, that is what I've been trying to do also. Every time I start my day, I start with a prayer. And, that God will help me through the day. And so that is it. And then, of course, we all have our hopes, we all have our aspirations, we all have our dreams and desires and so on. And all these things will remain, till there is, till we take this air. And likewise, learning also. I mean, it is very much cliche that, we keep on learning until the day we die. No? But that is something which is really essential. That is something which actually makes us organic. No? That is something which, helps us go on with life. That is actually something which, helps us realize the purpose that we have for our lives. No? So that is one thing, which I also try to do. And yeah, being human, we can never be perfect also. So, but having said that, it's always, God has given us a thinking mind, and our parents have, according to their own capacities, they have given us own capacity, according to the capacities and according to our choices. We have got the opportunity to, equip ourselves to become literate. So now, whether to transform that literacy to being educated individuals, it's our choice. No? So, that is something which I've been trying to do with myself as well. The little things that I learn, and, with the experiences and all, good or bad, trying to maintain the balance. And, most importantly, time and again, going back to where I started. And as a government official, yes, many people have this notion that, Putani, you have certain air and all these things. But, maybe we all should actually try to put ourselves in the other person's perspective as well before we come to any conclusion. No? Because, sometimes an individual, a person sitting in some kind of responsibility, certain things, due to certain certain obligations that particular person might not have the liberty to be too friendly as well. And at the same time, those people with whom we are dealing with also, due to certain limitations or due to certain experiences, we might feel that they are quite overbearing upon us. Yeah? But perhaps, this is something which I myself am learning. Yeah? So, as much as possible, try to put ourselves in that other person's shoes so that, we can be more tolerant to each other. And in the process, we can be more educated as well, more enlightened. And one thing that I'm reminded right now, when you talk about legacy, when you ask me about legacy, my father, I remember growing up as a kid, we had this, what do you call it, a diary kind of thing, where we used to put our parents' details and all.
Oh, yes.
Occupation.
Yes. Correct.
Father's occupation. So my father used to write, government servant.
Okay.
He never used to write his designation.
Oh.
He would just write government servant. So I used to get annoyed. So I used to tell my father, why aren't you, putting your designation, mentioning your designation in here? So he used to tell me, whatever a designation be, I'm a government servant. And my designation will change, but I will always remain a government servant. Of course, I did not understand much at that point of time. But now that I'm, a government servant myself, so I'm beginning to realize that. So, perhaps maybe that's the legacy that I would want to leave behind. That, whatever department or whatever responsibility you have, ultimately at the end of the day, we are government servants, we are civil servants, and perhaps that way maybe we can make the interactions more sweeter, I guess.
Wow. I mean, I think that's been a wonderful way to close it up, Oren. And I think you've said everything. And I'm sure our listeners have been, how to say, I think a lot of things is going on in their mind. Because, as I said, we really don't know who's tuning in and would be listening to you. Maybe it's a mother, it's a father, it may be an aspiring young man or woman, or somebody in the family that they have who is aspiring to be a civil servant and is trying, is attempting, is frustrated, and there's a lot of emotion flowing. And having to listen to somebody who have experienced it, have gone through it, and it's a real conversation. It's not some kind of a script conversation, but it's coming from the heart. It definitely would resonate as a human being. And we're just so grateful, Oren, that you opened your heart, you opened your world to us, and it's been a happy listening. And you did great. If I were to go back to your first line where you expressed that you were nervous, I don't see anywhere you've been nervous all through your sharing. At legacy, definitely, I think we all should think of it because it sets a tone what we do every single day. It's not something, at the end, but it's our everyday little things that we put out. And I think what we're also taking back from your sharing is how we put our faith first in terms of our actions, in our thoughts, and in the things that we do. So irrespective of whatever profession that we hold and who we are, it's how we treat each other. And I'm reminded again of what my grandfather would say often when I go with the complaints, and he would say, well, how about we put it this way? We sometimes don't see how we behave, and someone else sees it clearly.
Absolutely.
So I think it's good sometimes to take a step back when we're having conflicts of people misunderstanding us, to see what if I was wrong, and I judged it too quickly. And like you also said, that all of us are coming from a place of, we just don't know who is going through what. But if we could only be a little kinder in the way we respond to people, I think a lot can be solved. And I think our community needs that right now, more than anything, that we could be kinder to one another. And whatever struggles that we're all going through, if we could just pause and listen with an intending heart that, hey, I'm listening. I have thousands of, volcanoes erupting on my life, but hey, I got a minute to listen. This morning I saw in a TikTok, and sometimes I find that this 5 seconds, 10-second TikToks, if we to calculate, it takes away your whole day. But there are some social media TikToks that leaves an impression, that sets your mind in the right direction. So this morning I saw one TikTok, and it spoke about, I need a hug. That was the headline. And I watched it, and it attracted me because I'm a very emotional and sensitive person. And that video, it showed about a young man standing in a snow-blazed road, and the police patrol saw that car and checked on this man, and this police officer said, "Can I help you?" And this young man said, "I need a hug." And this officer says, "Why not?" And all he did was respond to that need of that individual who may have been going through a lot. He was definitely going through a lot. But if we are to respond and have that environment, that ecosystem where people can be honest about what they're going through and not be judged, I think a lot can be solved. It's not always about money. It is not always about, rules and regulation, but just being human. And the kind of profession that you're in with that big responsibility and authority that you have, it's quite a weight. And as citizens and as common people, sometimes with our own frustrations and of our bad experiences, we generalize a lot of the situations. Well, I hope the listeners, I'm sure they have been made aware what it's like to prepare for an exam. And we hope that the listeners are able to empathize with those who are preparing, and I think that kind of support is very much needed for the preparation, where you're not distracted and you're not to be judged if you're not doing well. Because a lot of the society, starting even from your home, that kind of pressure becomes more heavier than the exam,
Yeah.
And the purpose of why we wanted to focus a lot on your preparation and how you were able to make it with the real experience was something that we wanted others to understand, that this road is not something, it's easy. No road is easy, but an experience and an example is where we can help one another. So listeners, I hope you've enjoyed, and if you feel that this was of help, well, I can guarantee it was definitely for me. You know where to drop your comments in our Instagram and Facebook, and you have a number. And you have any stories that you feel that can inspire our other listeners, then you know where to get us and let us know, and we'll get in touch. So, Oren, would you like to say bye to our listeners?
It was nice sharing my experience with you all, and I hope you all liked my story.
Definitely.
And all the very best with whatever you are up to, and may God bless you all.
Well, on that note, Oren, I say bye, and 90.8 Hills FM is fortunate, is blessed, and we hope that we continue to serve you in the right way, with the right spirit, and with the right intentions, and we grow together. God bless and take care, and this is your RJ Gugu signing off.
Dear listeners, you have the right to know. Know that HIV is transmitted only through 4 routes.
Unprotected sex with an infected person.
Sharing of infected needles and syringes.
HIV-infected mother to her baby.
Transfusion of HIV-infected blood.
For more information on HIV, dial 1097.
This information is brought to you by Nagaland State AIDS Control Society.
You're listening to 90.8
FM radio station, using our voice to rate your choice. Stay tuned.